You know that feeling when you bend down to pick something up off the floor? A sock, a pen, whatever. And on the way back up, your body makes a noise that you are fairly sure it didn't used to make. Not a dramatic noise, just a small, quiet sound of protest. Like a hinge on a garden gate that hasn't been oiled since roughly 2015. And you stand there for a second, slightly confused, thinking, was that me? Did I just creak? I had a moment like that a while back. I was in the kitchen picking up a tea towel I'd dropped. Came back up and my left knee went off like a party popper at a very disappointing party. My son, who is 9, looked up from his cereal and said, "Are you all right, Dad?" I told him I was fine. Then I stood very still for a moment, holding the tea towel, wondering when I'd started needing to be asked that by someone who still has all his baby teeth. That was a bit of a morning, that one. Right, so here is the thing. Aging happens. That is not news, that is not a revelation. Nobody reaches 44, which I have recently, and without particularly enjoying the process, and thinks they have somehow dodged it. The grey hairs are there. The recovery time after a bad night's sleep is now measured in days rather than hours. The hangovers have become, frankly, disproportionate. These things are just true. But here is what I have been thinking about lately. There is aging and then there is decline. And those two things are not the same. Aging is the calendar. Decline is what happens when you let the calendar do all the work while you sit on the sofa watching it. And most people, and I include my former self in this, confuse the two completely. I spent most of my 30s assuming that my body would just sort of maintain itself. That whatever state I was in at 32 would be approximately the state I'd be in at 45, unless something dramatic happened. That the factory settings were permanent. I don't know where I got this idea. It was not based on evidence. I had watched my own father age. I had watched other men around me age. But somewhere in the back of my brain, I had quietly decided that I would be fine, without doing anything in particular to be fine. Which is, when you say it out loud, genuinely quite mad. Now, before we go any further, I want to say something briefly because people always ask. I am not a doctor. I am not a physiotherapist. I am not a personal trainer. I am a man in his mid-40s with a decent job, a good wife, 2 boys who exhaust me in the best possible way, and a growing pile of evidence that some of the decisions I made, or rather didn't make, in my 30s have started sending me invoices. I do this because I want my sons to understand things earlier than I did. That is the whole point. Not to lecture, not to perform wisdom I haven't earned, just to say, here is what I wish someone had sat me down and said when I was 28, eating chips at my desk and calling it a long day. And one of those things is this. The body you are walking around in right now, whatever age you are, is not a fixed object. It is a project. And like any project, it responds to whether or not you show up. So I want to paint you 2 pictures. 2 completely ordinary men, neither of them extreme, neither of them cautionary tales from a health documentary. Man 1. He is in his late 60s. He walks into a room and you don't think about it. He walks up a flight of stairs carrying a bag and he just does it. He gets up off the floor after playing with his grandkids and there is no production involved. No hand on the knee, no sideways shuffle, no quiet moment of gathering himself on the way up. He is not an athlete. He never was. He just spent 20 or 30 years doing the basics consistently. He walked. He carried things. He ate reasonably. He lifted a bit of weight a few times a week. Nothing heroic, nothing Instagram-worthy, just enough to keep the engine running. He can still open jars. He can still carry his own shopping from the car without it being an event. And when his grandchildren want him to kick a ball about in the garden, he can actually do it. Man 2, also late 60s. And he is not ill. Nothing dramatic has happened to him. He just didn't maintain it. Spent his 40s and 50s sitting more than moving. Let the weight creep up in the way that weight does when you're not paying attention. Half a stone here, half a stone there, and then suddenly your GP is showing you a chart and the number on it is upsetting. His balance has quietly become unreliable in the way he wouldn't have believed at 40. Stairs take consideration now. Getting up from a low sofa is a process. A walk to the end of the road leaves him more out of breath than he thinks it should. He still gets on with it. He is not complaining. But the independence, the sheer physical independence of being able to do what he wants without his body weighing in with an opinion, that has gone. Quietly. Without him ever making a decision to let it go. The difference between those two men is not really genetics. It is not luck. It is the choices that got repeated, quietly, invisibly, across 20 or 30 years, until one day they showed up. And this is the part that gets me when I sit with it. Frailty does not arrive dramatically. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives in millimeters. You take the lift instead of the stairs. Fine. You stop walking to places and start driving. Fine. You put the gym bag in the car boot and never quite get around to using it. Very fine, apparently. I know this one personally. That bag was in my car for 4 months before I admitted it had become more of a statement of intention than anything else. Each individual choice means nothing, but the direction of travel means everything. And here is the other thing that I think gets missed in all of this. People talk about staying fit like it is about vanity, like it is about looking good in a shirt or fitting into the jeans from 10 years ago or whatever. And maybe it starts there for some people. That is fine. Start wherever you want. But it cannot end there, because vanity gets boring as a motivation, especially when it is 6 in the morning and it's raining and the motivation is supposed to be your trouser size. The real motivation, the one that actually sticks, is capability. What can I do? What do I want to still be able to do at 65, at 70? Can I carry my own bags? Can I get up off the floor without making it a whole thing? Can I walk around a city for a day without sitting down every 20 minutes? Can I keep up with my grandchildren without needing to sit on a bench and wave at them from a distance? That is what we are actually talking about. That is what is on the table. Right. If you are finding any of this useful, and I genuinely hope you are, please do subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me what you think, or tell me where you are with all of this. I read them. I am not just saying that. It also helps the channel reach people who might actually need to hear it, which is the whole point. Now, back to it. So what does this actually look like in practice? Because it has to be practical or it's useless. The first thing is strength work. And when I say strength, I do not mean bodybuilding. I do not mean becoming enormous. I mean maintaining enough muscle that your body can do things, carry things, recover from things, stay upright when something unexpected happens. Muscle mass starts declining quietly in your 30s, and it accelerates if you do nothing about it. The antidote is not complicated. Lift things regularly. Use your legs. Carry a bit of weight. 2 or 3 sessions a week. It does not have to be a gym. It just has to happen. And then balance, which nobody thinks about until they fall over. Your balance is trainable. You can get better at it. Stand on one leg while you're cleaning your teeth. Sounds daft, genuinely works. Because the alternative, losing balance confidence as you age, leads to falls. And falls, for older people, are genuinely serious. That is not dramatic. That is just true. Then mobility. The ability to move for a full range without something screaming. Spend 10 minutes stretching. Not because it's enjoyable. It mostly isn't. But because the alternative is gradually becoming someone who can't put their socks on without sitting down to do it, which is not where either of us want to end up. I discovered I could not touch my toes about 2 years ago. I don't mean I was slightly short. I mean I bent forward and my hands were hovering somewhere around my shins, like I was waiting for the rest of me to show up. Worked on it. Takes time, but it comes back if you ask it to. And body weight. Just broadly. You do not need to be lean, but carrying a lot of excess weight through your 50s and 60s is weight your joints are carrying, weight your heart is carrying, and it makes everything harder. Every hill, every flight of stairs, every morning is harder. And cardiovascular work, which is the one most people know about and many people still avoid. Your heart is a muscle. That is a fact that I had to sort of sit with for a while before it properly landed. It is a muscle. and it responds to being worked exactly like any other muscle responds to being worked. Walk fast enough that talking is slightly inconvenient. Cycle, swim, do something that gets your heart rate up a few times a week. Because the data on cardiovascular fitness and how you age, how your brain ages, how your energy levels hold up, how your heart holds up, is genuinely not subtle. I started running last year. Badly. Slowly. I looked, I suspect, like a man who had only ever heard running described verbally. But I do it. 3 times a week, roughly, 20 minutes, sometimes more. And something has changed. Not dramatically, not in a way that would make a good before and after photo, but in a way I can feel. I carry the shopping in from the car and it's not a big deal. I take the stairs at work without thinking about it. Small things. But the small things add up in both directions. What I actually want for my boys, and this is the bit that matters to me properly, if I am honest, is not for them to be athletes. It is not for them to have impressive physiques. It is for them to be 65 years old and still have options, to be able to go for a long walk on a Sunday afternoon because they fancy it, to get up off the floor after playing with their kids, or grandkids, God, that's a thought, without it costing them something, to still be in the game, to be capable, to have a body that helps them rather than one they are quietly managing around. I want them to know early, much earlier than I did, that the choices they repeat in their 30s will show up later, whether they like it or not, that maintenance is so much easier than repair, that the man who cannot carry his own bags or climb his own stairs without stopping didn't make one catastrophic decision. He just made a series of perfectly ordinary ones, in the same direction, for a very long time. And I think back to that morning in the kitchen, the tea towel, the knee, my 9-year-old asking if I was all right over his cereal. I picked it up. I'm fine. But I didn't like the question. And I would quite like it when my boys are in their 40s and dropping things on the kitchen floor, if getting back up is the easy part.